Good morning, Chicago. This is Craig Jenke with the Department of Family and Support Services. Normally you'll be able to see my face, but we are broadcasting to you live from our secret underground bunker right now. So not all of our technical capacity is up and running, but we are here. I assure you this is really Craig, and I am here to talk to you about the rollout of the new application for 2020. With me, not really with me, because I haven't actually seen him for a couple months, but with me on the broadcast is Tom Mose, who's going to help out with questions later on. So first of all, as they come up, please enter them in the question box. You'll see it at the bottom of your little webinar control panel, and we will get to them at the end. Remember, as we go through the webinar, we may reach a place where we answer your questions before we get there. So here's Tom.
Hi, everyone. This is Tom Mose, and I work with Craig Zemke in the Department of Family and Support Services in the Children's Services Division. I am helping today to conduct the webinar remotely with Craig, and will provide technical assistance, as he just talked about. I just want to let you all know it's better if you call in from your telephone so you can hear the audio than on your computer. So we'd appreciate that. I'll chat with you throughout the presentation if you have any questions, technical questions. And at the end, I'm going to be the one reading some of the questions for Craig, and he's going to try to answer them given the time available. So we're excited to have over 200 people potentially joining us that signed up and registered today. We hope this is very informative. And lastly, and Craig will make this reminder too at the end, but there is a recording of this PowerPoint, and a copy of the PowerPoint from this webinar will be provided to you. And Craig will provide you more details about how we'll do that at the end. So go ahead, Craig, take it away. I'm going to mute myself. And if there's anything, I'll come in and talk to you during it. But good luck. Thanks.
All right. So I'm gratified to have so many people here. It is good to be back. I want to cover a few things up front before we get started, just to kind of head off some questions. I do not have a date, first of all, to tell you when the application will open, other than very soon. I do not have a date because that is being discussed at the highest levels of city government, possibly right now. And as soon as we come out with the formal plan, it will be released to you. You will probably find out at the same time I do, if not slightly before. However, it is very soon. It is soon enough that we need to start getting ready and doing some basic preparations. The kind of preparations they're going to do also give us information that we need to know about returning children and so on, to help us with planning about how we're going to do the application, how we're going to open, and so on. Those things are not questions that I have the answer to right now, but I assure you they're coming very soon. So stay tuned, and we are going to get everything going as soon as we can clearly communicate a plan for how we're going to safely do this. These are strange times. So what we're doing today is I want to ensure that everyone out there can start out on the same page, can navigate COPA admin and do what they need to do to prepare for using the online application. And we are all going to be using the online application again this year. And how we can use that towards recruiting and retaining the children that we need as families. Okay. So we're going to start with designating returning children. That's something we can do right now. I'm going to also go over how to effectively use the slot allocation, what we call the slot matrix, to set up points for 2020 and 2021. You won't be able to do that just now, but I want everyone again to be on the same page. Some of these things will be review for some people and brand new for others, so forgive me if I'm going through things that some of you already know. but some things have changed. We have a new feature. It's going to seem like a small thing at first, but I assure you it is going to make this process easier than it was last year. The other piece that you'll be happy to know is so new that it's not reflected in the PowerPoint yet, is that we have a manual. So that I'm hoping to be able to get that out to everybody this afternoon. If not, by the end of the week or the middle of next week, we will be able to send out a manual on how to set up your slots for the application. It is from the developer, and it's very good point by point. The reason I don't have it today is that, as I said, we have a new feature, which I'll point out to you when we get there, and it wasn't reflected in the text of the manual yet, so they're adding a page, and it's just one page, so it shouldn't take very long, and we should get that out to you soon. Okay, so what do we need to do right now? Well, first of all, we've gotten in touch with almost everybody, but not everybody, about their profile on Chicago Early Learning. This is the public-facing website where parents who are searching for care can see who you are and what kind of services you're offered. So we want to make sure that those are accurate. So if you have not done so, please look at your profile, make sure, and I'll show you how to do that. Make sure it's accurate, and then send us any information that needs to change. The second piece will be identifying returning children. And the third piece, which we cannot do now for reasons that will become clear, the capacity and slots, that will be something that we will need to do before we offer slots to families. So when we say we're opening the application, we're letting them apply. We're not going to tell them if they have a seat yet. That's coming later. But we did want to get the site open. We wanted the families to see that we are out there, that we are still here, and to see what kind of services they can apply for. Okay, so here's where I put the calendar. Again, we do not have final dates to give you. Very soon, though, we will open the platform right now, if you go to chicagoearlylearning.org, there is a warning there there is a splash page that's all about resources for COVID-19, and it just says the application will come soon. So we will turn that off soon and have the parent-facing application. Again, it's been down, it's been redesigned. It looks nicer, and it foregrounds community-based programs more than it used to, particularly if you log in using a smartphone. So I think you'll be happy with the new app when you see it. Once that opens, it will be time, which again will be very soon, it will be time to go in there and mark your kids as returning. Then we'll have to allocate slots for next year. That won't happen until next month. We'll have to be looking at what that will look like, what our capacity is, and how we're going to go about reopening. And then after that point, we will offer slots to families. Every single site, all of you have to set up your slot matrix before we open it. In terms of offering placement, because before we do it for real, we need to test it to make sure that all of the mechanics of the application work properly and the right families are offered. So we do that by cloning the site and running a test on the copy before we run the same process on the live site. So we'll need everybody to help us out by setting up their slots before we test, so we can make sure that it works correctly. Not just in general, but for you. Okay, so the first thing, this is where I'm saying, I can't see the questions right now, but I know someone has already asked it, I'm sure. We told everyone to check their site profile, and sure enough, the more diligent among you went online, went to Chicago Early Learning and said, what does it say about my site? And all it said is that we're closed. Here are your pandemic resources. So what we probably should have mentioned is that you can't see it there. There is a report in COPA, is report number 976 on the reports page. And when you load that report, it will show you your site's profile. So have the description, the age group served, is there Head Start services, early Head Start services, do you do home visiting? Those kinds of things are all questions that are asked. So just review that. If it's wrong, let me know. At this point, you can tell us directly because we've got most of it done. But the link has been going out in CEL or the CSD updates for the past couple months that says go here. If you do that, there's a form and ask all of the questions on the profile. So, and I would say we've got about 400 sites right now. I want to say 360 are done. If yours is one of the other 40 sites and you haven't updated your profile, please do so. Okay. Hey, I'm going to get into the first task. Again, this is what's going to happen as soon as you get the announcement that we are opening, which, again, I assure you is soon. The exact date is just being discussed right now. So the setup has to be done by an admin user. There should be one for every site. There isn't one, then the agency admin should add one. And if you don't have one of those, you need to contact me because we need to have an admin for every site in order to do the process. So if you look at COPA, you see my screen here. There's an admin tab, there's an admin link. If you don't have that on your COPA screen, you are not an admin user. If you do, you can go through there and follow up. So this you can do now. Before even we roll out right now. In fact, after we get off this webinar, if you could do this immediately today, this is great. Just look at the classrooms that you have set up. When we're trying to figure out what our capacity was and will be, we need to do this based on the class profiles that you have in COPA. And while many people have been pretty good recently about updating that, we still have missing information that we need to have corrected. Now, the reason it's missing isn't because, everybody can go in and put it in. It's because last year we updated the site profile and the classroom profile to add more information that we specifically need for CEL or the application for the reporting to ISB on PFA and some other pieces. So there are more fields. So if you've had the same classroom operating for several years and you haven't updated it, you're missing information. You couldn't have put it in when you first created the class because the field wasn't there. So once you are in COPA admin, you will see your agency, and you click through there, you'll see the site, and you'll have the classes. See the little, it looks like the side of a Rubik's Cube. You click on that, you've got the edit button, and you can edit the class profile. So here's a class profile. You see some of the things that have been added. I'll give you just a quick tour. You see there are funding sources that ask if you've served preschool age children, how old the age groups, age ranges. It looks like we're asking the same question twice. Really, we're not. Explain that in a second. Class capacity, language of instruction. Many of these things have been added recently, and we want to make sure that we have that for every class. Okay, the first thing, and this is important to us because this decides whether or not you will be counted on the capacity for the application. There's a box that says serving preschool age children. So you would be forgiven if you look at that and believe that means this classroom serves preschool age children. Maybe it does. But what it means here is these slots are on the application. Please include them in our count of available slots. So That is for center-based classes at this point, serving kids 3 to 5, that should be counted as part of your site capacity. So even though you may also have a home visiting group that serves preschool age children, don't check that right now. That is for, that actually means I am going to be on the application. All right. Now, funding sources we have added. We've added these because we have multiple funders now, and being the city, we go out and seek all the funding that we can find. So looking at classrooms, sometimes we have a classroom that's funded by Head Start and Preschool for All and childcare. Another classroom may only be one, and another classroom may have 2 if there's 3. So when we are asked to find out how many classrooms are funded by Preschool for All, we can't use the program model exactly. So this is what we're trying to do. You go down this list, you can hit the control, and any funding source that classroom has, you can mark. So the brief version of this, because there are a lot of choices, these are the ones that we need. PFA, DFSS, that's Preschool for All funding that comes from us. There is a CPS option. That's because CPS used to have classrooms in COPA. It's not you. If you're on this call, it's not you. Don't use that one. Again, Head Start, that means Head Start that is funded by our Head Start grant, so that we can tell the feds how many classrooms we have and where they are. If you have your own Head Start grant that is not ours, there is a different line there. It says non-DFSS Head Start. Pick that one instead. Similarly, when it says childcare, that's you have an activity number and you bill us for childcare. You get childcare from Action for Children, mark Action for Children. And here's where, and the reason that we're doing this whole convoluted system right now, if some of the kids are from Action for Children, some of the kids are us, mark them both. And now there's a checkbox there that says directly operated. This means I am not a childcare partner. If you are a partner site of a Head Start delegate, don't mark directly operated. Everyone else, check the box. It doesn't mean directly operated. It means I am not a partner. Here we go with the class size and class capacity. Again, they sound like we're asking the same question twice. We're not. Class size is how many kids are in there. But the class capacity, and it's not actually required. The class capacity is what we're calculating totals for the application. So for center-based services, usually that's either 17 or 20. This is not about how many slots you're funded for. This is about how much room you have. So you may have 20 kids in the class, and DFSS may only be paying you for 18 of them. But we need to have the total number in there, because we want to make sure that if you have place to enroll another child, that you're able to do so. But if you're full, that we don't accidentally offer a slot to people who you can't hit. Okay. So then the age range, again, to be counted on the universal application, this would be 3 to 5. There are also options for birth to 3 and school age. Please don't leave this blank. It's very confusing. And again, when I need to find how many birth to 3 classes we have, it can take hours and hours when it should take seconds, because that hasn't been filled out. So please just go in and fill it out once. It'll be great. All right. Once the application has opened, you will be asked to decide which children are returning next year. I'm not asking you to do that today. There's a reason for that, because we added a new field, and it will make this much easier than last year We also had some issues with 2-year-olds who were turning 3 being marked and not showing up on your returning count. We have fixed that with the new system. So you shouldn't have to do any math to figure out how many spots you have available. You should be able to mark everyone who's coming back as returning, and they'll be counted. So this will be a lot smoother and simpler. So to do this, you will go to Child Next Year Preparation down the admin page. See, it's in the bottom section. It's under school year end and rollover. You come to a screen. You may be familiar with this or not, but it'll tell you who's enrolled right now. So waitlisted children, terminated children, eligible children don't even show up in this list. This is just the children who today are enrolled in your program. We've got the program model, option, age, and then there are three things you can choose from. All right, returning, recertify back to waiting list, or archive. Marking these things won't do anything right now. It'll just tell you where they're going at the end of the year. Okay. Now you'll see that COPA has made default selections. Based on a child's age, they decide whether the child is coming back or not. Don't take it for granted. COPA might be wrong. That's why we're asking you to do it and not just doing it by batch. You need to find out whether the family is coming back or not. I realize under today's challenging circumstances, that may be more difficult than it usually is. But just do your best at this point and then continue to watch that and keep track of that as we get closer to placement. Okay. So returning means they're coming back to the same program that they're currently enrolled in. So this would be a 3-year-old in Preschool for All who's going to be a 4-year-old in Preschool for All next year. They don't need eligibility redetermined, so they don't need to go to the waiting list. You just mark them as returning, and they will come back to the eligible list. You can put them in their new classroom after rollover. This will be in September. Recertify is, for the purposes of what we're talking about right now, essentially means this child is a PIR age 2-year-old. That means this child was 2 last year on September 1st, but will be 3 this year. And so they're going to be going into a new program. So we need to put them back on the waiting list to re-enroll them for the new program. So we'll mark recertify for those kids. And archive is for the non-returning kids. We don't need to do that to them now while we're not, for the most part, operating. Just leave them in place for now, but we'll set them up here. And then when we roll over to the new program year, they will be moved to the archive. COPA will assume that 5-year-olds are going to the archive. Again, that's not necessarily the case, so you want to check that out. Here's the other thing. I do this wrong every time. The first time I do this every year, I do it wrong. I go through, I set up where I want each child to go, and then I hit submit, and then nothing happens. And nothing happens because I didn't pick the children. So the far left column next to the name is a checkbox. That way you can set up certain children because you know what their status is, and you can process them all right now. But the children, if you don't know whether they're coming back or not, just don't select them and leave them alone, and you can go ahead and do that when you find out. Now, this is the new feature. So I built this up, and you're like, what? That's it? Just that? Yes. Rather than a separate screen where it asks you if you want to set returning flags or not, and you don't really know who the flags were set for, we've added another column in addition to the returning, recertify, or archive. It's not live yet. That's why I'm telling you to wait until we make the announcement and open up the application. Because when we push through the changes to open up the application, we're also going to add this field. So at this point, for the children you mark as returning or recertify, if you want the flag as them as returning, meaning you think they're coming back next year and you want them to have a space in the classroom that the online application does not give away, then you mark them as returning. And this year, because we changed the process like this, regardless of how old the child is, or whether they're going to the waiting list or to the eligible list, this will set that returning flag if you check the box. So make sure that again is marked for all the correct children before you hit submit and move on. Once you've submitted,
Hi,
yes,
Craig.
yes, yes,
This is Tom.
yes.
For some of the people that are joining later after we started, I'm Tom Mose. I'm providing technical assistance to Craig as we do this webinar remotely. I work with him in Children's Services Division. Just want to let you know real quick, there's a question I think that maybe you stated, but I know you were going to take questions at the end, but if you don't mind, I think it pertains to the slide that you just showed. The
Yeah,
previous
no, go
one.
ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead. Yep.
It says,
Yep.
but otherwise, everyone that types questions in, will answer them at the end. But this was a two good questions, real quick. Should we also be putting the Head Start children who have been enrolled in Head Start in 2 program years that need re-verification as recertified?
You're right. That is a good question. And yes.
Okay, that's good. And then one last question, and then I'll mute myself so you can continue going on. And just to let people know, I've been getting a few questions about the availability of the PowerPoint in these slides. Yes, the PowerPoint will be made available to you, and Craig will go over that again in the end. And also, you should, in your dashboard, have a handout section. We shared a PDF copy of the PowerPoint that you can download right now. Last question, and then I'll put myself on mute. Are we able to enter younger than 3 years old?
Okay. Yeah. So children who are under 3 right now, but are going to be, they're going to come back and be in your 3 to 5 year old program, you should mark them as recertified. This will put them on the waiting list, and it will occupy a spot for them. And then after we roll over, they will be on the waiting list. You can re-enroll them with their new 3-year-old model, and they'll occupy a spot in the class. Now, the difficulty here is some of you I know are trying to save a spot for a child who will be more than most years, because they may be 2 years old still on September 1st. We're actually not rolling over until September 8th. But children who turn 3 shortly afterwards will not right now occupy a returning slot on next year's matrix. Now, we are working on a solution for that. There is an additional checkbox on the child file for early 3. And we are working to make that feed into the calculation to make children have a spot so that they can occupy a returning slot in the preschool classroom. I don't believe that is effective yet. So if that's the nature of the question, if you're saying, what about my child who's 2 but will turn 3 on September 15th, I'm trying to enroll them in my Head Start classroom, I would not mark them right now, and we'll get back to you on that when we're sure that the extra checkboxes work. And once we get that online, you can also hold spots for those children. I would want to point out that is, and it's one that's slowly going away, but that is a Head Start thing, the ability to enroll those kids we call early threes. If the child is 2 years old on September 1st, even if that child turns 3 by the first day of school, which is September 8th, under the Preschool for All program, that child is not eligible to be in TSA this year in 2020, 2021, because the system thinks that is a 2-year-old, regards him as a 2-year-old, and when I say the system, I'm not talking about COPA, I'm talking about ISD, because they won't be eligible for kindergarten for a couple more years. So children who are enrolling in preschool in fall of 2020 are expected to be eligible for kindergarten in 2021 or 2022. The children who are considered part of the prevention initiative still and would not be into Preschool for All classroom or not funded as such until the 2021 program. But Head Start, you can move them in when they turn 3. Confusing, especially when you're trying to blend funding. Okay, so many people do feel that this setting things up for next year is needlessly complicated, and that's because it is. So once you've done it, you need to check. You will see back in that earlier slide when you had the menu of next year setup options. You can also look at who's already been set up as recertify or returning or scheduled for archive. If you made a mistake, the good news is it's really simple. You go to that list, check the boxes as back to enrolled list, and send them back. Just remember, when you send them back, you have unchecked their returning flag. So when you do it again and send them to the right place, if they are coming back, you want to recheck it. Make sure that you do the new column and mark them as returning. Okay, so those are the pieces that you will be able to do. And I'm hoping in the next week or two, but whenever it is that we get final approval and open up the application to the public, you will be able to go in there and mark the kids as returning and so on. I'm going to walk you through the slot matrix quickly. Now, you probably can't set this up yet. If you've thought about this, you understand why we're not open. And so, for the most part, there are a couple sites out there that are operating as emergency care providers. And we thank you for that, if that is you. But most sites are not operating center-based services right now. So as we come forward with a plan to reopen, I'm sure there will be some deep and careful discussions about what our capacity should be. And when we come up with that, how many kids we can safely serve, how we're going to do that, and when we send out information about that, this will impact how many slots we can give away. So we do not have answers to that yet. You can ask me that, but when you do put that in questions, I will come back and tell you that we don't have answers to these things yet, but we will.
Hello, Craig again. This is Tom Mose. If I could just excuse me. One last question, and then we'll keep moving on. For clarification, they asked, does this only apply to center-based programs?
Yes. For now, yes. This is going to be for center-based programs because we can't. The slots are interchangeable, and the way the system is set up right now, each site can only have one set of slots. So we have programs that have center-based and home-based programs at the same address right now. So we may change that, and then we'll be able to open it up for home-based programs or enable the system to have multiple sets of slots for a site. We're not technologically at that point yet. So stay tuned on that. But for right now, also, again, for announcing things that I don't have dates for, right now, it's only for 3 to 5 year olds. We are working with the developer to open up a birth to 3 application. That is closer than you realize, and so it will happen sooner than you think. Our experience, though, is that families don't apply for birth to 3 care months in advance. They apply for it when they need it. So we wouldn't be opening it up this early anyway. But as soon as we get this piece live and move forward on how we're going to reopen and so on, you will start to hear about how we are going to open up online applications for birth to 3. Again, initially that's only going to be center-based care, but once we have the ability to have 2 applications at the same time, we may have the ability to have more than 2, in which case we may have a home-based services as well. You can advertise your home visiting services on the Chicago Early Learning website, and we urge you to do that, to fill out the site profile information so it can be on there, but you can't apply there. What we are doing is you can have a phone number or your own contact information about applying on the CEL website, and then families can contact you separately. So I would go ahead and use it as advertising and promotion, but you won't be able to click the link and fill out an application yet. I emphasize yet. These are all things that we are working on or were working on intensively before the late unpleasantness. Okay, so here is the matrix. Did I show you how to get there? Nope. All right, so you go to under the bottom of the admin page, right above where the next year setup was, there will be a place where you can pick the slot matrix. That's what we call it because it's called site slots allocation by eligibility points, which is really too clunky for me to say more than once per day. So the slot matrix, you click through that and you will see a page like this. You're going to want this to say, as it does here, next year, 2020 to 2021. It may default the current year right after we roll over. I'm not certain, but all of the sites that are currently on the application, you have a slot matrix that is set up. So if you look at, you filter this for current year, 2019 to 2020, you have slots set up. Your slots for next year aren't necessarily the same, both because your capacity or class size may change or may have changed, or because your returning count is different. You have new children who are coming back and so on. So the system is set up to operate during the summer, both current year and next year, even though you can only apply online for 1 year at a time at this point. So you will filter this for next year. And once you do that, you'll then get a grid that is empty. You'll mark the box that says click to offer slots. Now, if you look across the screen, everything is blank right now because nothing has been offered. But underneath, there is a count that says site capacity. That is the sum of the capacity that you entered for all of your classrooms that were also marked as serving preschool children. That's why I went through that whole piece before so we could get here. So this tells how much total space COPA thinks you have as a site. So under total slots there, you mark how many you actually have. If that's wrong, if the COPA's guess is wrong, we would ask you to go back in there and correct that so we can figure out when we see that you have 20 total slots, then we can figure out where they are. But you enter again, usually it's the same number, but again, not always. And this again is not a funded slot. It says I have 3 classrooms, so the total number of children I can put in there based on my age range and licensing and so on is, say, 57. So you put in 57, regardless of how many preschool slots or Head Start slots you get. It's just the total head count. Again, here is COPA's guess, which is based on the class profiles that you've identified as serving preschool age children, which again means please include me on the application. So you had to submit it and then load it again. And the reason you did that is because the previous total was based on having 0 slots, because right now everybody has 0 slots for next year's application because we just turned it on. But once you reload it, then it will say 20, and the system will do math for you, which is nice. You don't have to do the math. It's already done it. So you put in 20 as your capacity. Then the system has looked through all of the children that you have marked in admin as returning next year. That's why we have that as the first step. So it's doing the math. You see here, it's taken 20, it's subtracted 3 returning children, and it says you have 17 net slots. And right now, because you haven't set anything else up, they're all in slot 5. So that's the default. That's where any new slots that appear show up. And slot 5, of course, is the highest need, as you can see from on the page where it says 250 plus points. These are the points that are determined by COPA, either in the recruitment or the waiting list, to calculate and prioritize eligibility. So if you want to modify this to allow lower need children, higher income families to enroll, then you need to put some of those slots downhill. So if you see as you move left from slot 5, each of the buckets has a lower threshold. 210 points, 175 points, 95 points here. That may be different this year, but I think that's pretty close to what it is. Okay, so again, just briefly, what does this mean? Slot 5 means the very highest need. Basically, you get many points as an applicant for being homeless, for being a foster child, having no income at all, and children who are in need of full day care also get a 40-point kick. So they may not be as high as the no income, but they're higher than bucket 4 when you prioritize. So slot 4, the cutoff there means that the children are below the federal poverty line. So it is still a very high need bucket. It's just not the highest one. So Head Start eligible children will fall under slots 4 or 5. So, and then the income brackets go up. Slot 3 is Preschool for all children who will also have indicated on the application that they are child care eligible. Slot 2 is below 200% federal poverty, which is the guideline currently for our Preschool for all program. And then slot 1 is no restriction at all. You don't need any points. So if you're going to fill some of your slots with private pay families who aren't eligible for publicly funded programs, that's where you put those slots. There's a room for them. We still want them to be enrolled in the system. The reason for that is they're now occupying a seat, and we won't try to give that seat to someone else when there's no room. So the system is designed to waterfall. So weird, I never heard that word used as a verb before, but when we say it waterfalls, that means if you're eligible for slot 5, you're eligible for 1 through 5. Well, if you're eligible for slot 3, you're eligible for slot 1 through 3, etc. So a high need family can get any slot, even if their own bucket is full. But a lower need family, if you're, say, an applicant and the family income is 150% of federal poverty, you can get a bucket 2 or bucket 3 slot, but you will not be eligible for a bucket 4 slot, even if there is a vacancy. So if that is what's happening, your family is applying who are, you want to enroll and you have room, but the system is saying there's no room for them in their bucket, that may mean that you need to go back into admin and fix it. So what I'm showing you now is preparation at this point, but once you go in and set up the slot matrix, that's not something that you want to do once and never look at it again. That causes all kinds of problems later as people drop, as new children enroll and become returning, and so on. So it is, especially in the summer, but really all year, someone should go in probably weekly or at least twice a month to look at it again. And there are ways to look at it without actually even logging into admin, which I'll show you in a second. So here is an example. We put, in this case, 5 spots in slot 3, 10 slots in slot 4, and left 2 in slot 5. My advice to save problems for later, always leave some space, always leave some slots behind in slot 5. That's not just because we are prioritizing high need children, that's part of it, but it's also because if you are enrolling children on an ongoing basis, and there are new children who enroll somehow before September, and I'm very hopeful that we will be open before September. And if that happens, you have new children enrolled this year, they take up a returning slot next year, and that will actually also come out of slot 5, because slot 5 is determined by subtracting the returning children from everything else. So you want to leave extra space in there for children who may enroll and end up on the returning list. Otherwise, if you have no spots in slot 5 and you enroll a new child as returning, it's gone negative, and that's not good. All right. You're ready to do these things now? Congratulations. You can go in and set up. Now you
Craig, this is Tom
you
again.
may, hey Tom, I hear you. Tom.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to ask you a quick question, and there were some questions that came in. We'll try to get to them at the end, but I think you answered a lot of them with explaining the slot matrix. But just for clarity, when you drop a child, it will automatically update the matrix, is the question.
Yes. So if you have a child that is enrolled, and we're talking about next year's matrix right now, if you have a child that is enrolled this year and they're occupying a returning spot next year, and then you drop them, it will drop that. They'll no longer have a spot next year. So if you have classes that are ending, I mean, it's a very complicated situation right now. But normally, sometimes we have classes that we advise you not to don't go and terminate them. What you do in admin is you just set the class end date, which defaults, if you just look in there and don't set it up yourself, it will have defaulted to September. Right, all of our, since the new year starts September 8th, all of the classes say that they end on September 7th, which is a holiday, so they don't. But you don't want to do that, so you can change that. If your last day of class is, say, June 15th, you would change the class end date to June 15th, and then leave all the children enrolled. Just close the class. Now they don't count as present or absent, just like now when we're closing the classes, but they're still occupying that spot next year. Otherwise, they may not have a spot identified. I mean, if you put them back on the waiting list, they may be given an offer if they're eligible, but they'll be treated just like all of the other applying children. So they won't necessarily be given an offer. So the best bet is to leave them where they are and not drop them. So if any of this is confusing, and pretty much all of this is confusing, we will be distributing this. If you look at the handout link, you can download this PowerPoint now. We're also sending it out this afternoon as with a new CSD update. There's also, as I mentioned, a manual that was developed. Some of you that came in late did not hear this. The developer has come out with an official manual for how to set up the application, and we will be distributing that. The only reason we're not distributing that today is because we did just get them to add the new feature where you can check that returning child column one by one, and so they're adding a page to the manual that tells you how to use that. But once that's done, which should be this week, and I'm hoping it's this afternoon, but if it's not, it should be this week, we'll get that out to you as well. Come on. Okay. There we go. Sorry, technical difficulties there. This computer is extremely slow. So the first thing now is just going to go through a few pieces for once it's up and running, how you can use this system effectively to recruit children and keep track of your ongoing recruitment process. So the first thing to be aware of is that you can see who has applied to your site, either the first choice or a second choice on the application using report 1150. It is, as the graphics here show you, on the reports menu, but we have changed the link and the menu at the top of the page for the recruitment list, so you will also see a link to the 1150 there. The reason the 1150 is better than the recruitment list itself is that the recruitment list is a list of families. And so when you see that filtered for your agency, if you are the second choice and the family applied somewhere else as the first point, even if you give them the offer, you can't see them on that list, which is frustrating. The 1150, though, is organized by child. So the name on the left-hand column is the child's name. And whether you're the first choice or the second choice, you will see everyone who applied to your census. So this is the way to access your applicants for next year. You can filter it. There are a number of fields that you can look at on this report. You can't look at them all at the same time because it's too big. So I created some. If you click the link that says memorize, there are a couple there. You'll see one of them is called allocation status, which I use, and another one that's called summer recruitment. I believe you can create your own if you want to. See the blank bar that's up there above where it says filter or customize? If you put a name in there and hit memorize, it will memorize your own. Often this report, well, right now this report will default to current year so that when you first log in, you won't see anybody, or you'll see all kids that you already have, and you want to filter it for next year. That may change as we get through the summer, but either way, there will always be a year that the report defaults to. So if you want to look at the other one, you need to make sure to change it. This is under filtering. There's a link that says filtering. It's right next to the customize and memorize. When you see that, you see we've got desired agency number 1, desired agency number 2, income status, and so on. And this was one of the particular memorized reports that we have. I'm showing you this only so that you can see, you see the column that desired agency number 1 that's blank. That's because it's not the agency that it's filtered for. So you'll see that they applied somewhere else, but you won't necessarily see where, and you don't really need to. You also notice on the far left, they have IDs that start with 9. These are not real COPA IDs. So once you convert a child to enroll them, and we'll discuss that at some other training later, you will then get a real COPA ID, but they just have a placeholder while they're on the recruitment list. And you can tell it's a recruitment file because it starts with 9. None of the other ones do. So as I said, there are filtered reports and memorized reports. There's one that's called Summer Recruitment, which again, I created. And you should probably use this during the summer. The reason for that is, as you can see, I added fields that had phone number, email address, and so on. So on the application, when a family applies, it says, please contact the agency and come in to verify your eligibility. That's not actually how we want it to work. That's just what we tell the family. What we want is for agencies, sites, everyone I'm talking to right now, basically, except possibly for Tom, to pull this report, look at the contact information, and call them or write an email and say, I see that you applied to our site. Are you still interested? When do you want to come in? Okay. Next we have report 975. This is one that you need to be familiar with. It just tells you all in a big group who has applied, who is returning. So you can see everyone who's being recruited for next year, and it will give you your overall status. This is good to look for because sometimes agencies get frustrated and users are working with it and they're telling me, we are trying to enroll families. The system says we're full, but we are not full. So this is where you look at report 975. It'll show you all the names of people who are being counted. If you see people on that list and you said those families never showed up, they're not enrolled, that's your problem with it thinking you're full. So you can go in and decline the offers to those families, and then you will have space to enroll your new child. There's also a 975S, which doesn't have everybody's name. It's just a quick overview. So it just shows you how many slots are available in each group, in each bucket, how many are returning, and everything that's available overall. So it's just a quick overall look. You can look at it. It'll take 30 seconds or a minute if nothing is wrong. And if you look at that and you see a negative number, you know something is wrong and you need to go in and fix it. As with all of them, this will default to 1 year. During the summer, we are still technically in the 19 and 20 year, but we are talking today about applying for next year, which will be 2021. So make sure that's filtered for the right year. Be aware when you look at it that you can look at 2 right up until we roll over to next year. Okay. Another thing, because we'll get a volume, not right now, but as we get closer to the end of the year, and there has already been a lot of contacts from families wanting to know about next year's application. So we expect once we open them up, that we'll start to hear from people. Because of the volume and the diminutive size of our tiny but mighty data unit, we ask you to use the COPA Help Desk ticket system, and we can sort through those as quickly as we can, all in one place. So this is rather than calling me or emailing me or so on because you're trying to get a child enrolled. We have help this year. We've got a team. We're hiring more people and pulling that together. So we'll be able to process these tickets as quickly as humanly possible. Having said that, it might, when the volume is high, it may take several days to get around to processing them all. We're trying to get that time period down as much as possible. It's part of why we're centralizing everything. And here's me. You know, if you've seen a version of this before, you notice I've taken my phone number off the list. Why is that? Because I'm not at the office and I haven't been there since March. So you can't call me. You can send me an email. I am here every day at this computer, and I will get back to you as quickly as I can. Having said that, I think I don't have anything else for you, but I believe there are some outstanding questions. Do we have more questions, Tom?
Yeah, can you hear me okay, or is there an echo?
I hear you.
Okay, good. We just have a few questions. That's all, and I'm sure there'll be a couple more questions coming in, and I'll try to look at the questions and see if we can group some of them together. Else, if we don't get to your question today, everyone, Craig will try to answer it and follow up with you. Okay, so we have, I'm going to pull them up here. There's some questions during after explaining the slot matrix. There was just some clarification questions. It said, let's see. So we can begin setting up the recertify, archive children now, or do we need to wait until the system launches the new application?
Okay, so you could start now. I would highly recommend that you wait until the system opens for the new application. The reason for that is because we're going to push through that update at the same day that we flip the system to opening next year's application, and you'll be able to mark the returning children the way that I showed you. For those of you that have done it before, you can mark them the old way, and returning children are still marked just fine. It's that recertify group, those kids that are 2 now that will be 3 next year, that sometimes it didn't mark them, and we had difficulty figuring out why. So I would hold off until we open it, which again should be pretty soon. We have a date in mind, but we're working with mayor's office and CPS to try to coordinate everything at the same time. So there'll be an announcement about that hopefully very soon.
All right. Okay, Craig, thank you. Does a child on the recruitment list affect our open slots?
Yes. So if a child is on the recruitment list, potentially they affect your open slot. So the way that it works, and we'll cover this in more communication when we get closer to placement, but the way that application works is everyone who applies is on the recruitment list. And based on their eligibility, the system will determine who is eligible for a slot that you have open, and it ranks them accordingly. So if there is an open slot that the child is eligible for, once we get to placement, it will make an offer, and it makes offers in order of eligibility. So the highest points, the neediest family first, and then on down. So if you have a child on the recruitment list with an offer, that reduces the number of slots that you have left, and it does impact your slot matrix and your capacity. But that's what happens once we reach placement. So when we open the application and families start to apply, they'll go on the waiting list. But until we do placement, until we start offering slots, they will not. No one will impact next year's slots because that application is not open. Now, for those of you that are working now, I have been working over the current year and we're on the application, you know that someone who has applied for this year is impacting your matrix, your current year matrix. So if you have somebody who is sitting on recruitment with an offer, you can't give that slot to anyone else until you decline that offer, because that slot is being held for the applicant.
All right, thanks, Craig. Another question, sort of similar to these. We have a site that will be closing on June 30th. Should we archive those children and/or mark those who are eligible to return as returning, because we hope that they will enroll at one of our other locations?
Oh, that's a good question. So we don't. The first thing is, let us know about that, because if the site is closing for good on June 30th, we don't want them to be included on the application, because we don't want to offer anyone a spot to a site that is closing. So the first thing you should do, if they're not going to be open in fall 2020, don't set up a slot matrix for them at all, and let us know that they're not coming back, and we will remove them from the application. Having said that, if you think they are going to, or you're hopeful that they're going to come to another site, how would I do that? I would like them to, well, I'd place them on the waiting list. So I would not archive them. I'd place them on the waiting list once the site is closed, and change them to the new site. So if they're trying to come there, a waiting list, just like the recruitment list, will be processed for new applicants. So once you do this, it's particularly if you wait until after June 30th to do this, and I'm hoping that around that point we will be able to offer slots. You'll be able to give them a slot at the new place. And once they're on the waiting list for the new center, you can also mark them by hand. You can't use the process I showed you. If you go into the system and mark them as returning next year, you can have them be a returning child for the new site. So I'm not sure how you would take up space in advance. That's something that we'll have to deal with closer to the rollover. But again, I am sorry, I'm rambling. The answer is close the site, put them on the waiting list for the new site, and we will have instructions as we get closer to the year. But you'll want them, whether they're as a new applicant with a point system or as a returning child, you're going to want them to count on the new slots matrix. So keeping them where they are won't do anything. So you don't have to worry about their slots being given away right now, because even though we're letting people apply, we're not making any placement yet. So right now I would just leave them where they are, but when the site closes, that's what we'll do, put them on the waiting list for the new site. But anybody out there who has a site that is not returning next year, let me know, because I want to make sure that we're not offering slots for it. I don't even want anyone to apply for it, and then we yank the carpet out from under the family and tell them that this is not an option anymore. Okay.
Thanks, Craig. Thank you. This is Tom Mose again with helping to read. I think we have just 2 more questions, and they can be combined. And just let people know real quick before you sign off, we appreciate that you've all stayed on with us through the presentation. We're going to get done early today, and that when you're on the CSC update, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a DFSS YouTube channel. And so we'll make this recording available on the YouTube channel, and you'll also have this PowerPoint and other information that Craig has said throughout the presentation that we'll get to everybody. So lastly, how are we supposed to do outreach to families, have successful enrollment season? How can people access the application without internet? I know those may be hard to answer, Craig, but
just wanted to ask you a real quick again, how are we supposed to do the outreach to families, have a successful enrollment season? And if they don't have the internet, how can they access the application?
Okay, so I wish I had better answers for you. All I can really say is that we're going to get some guidance out on that soon, because that's being explored, and those questions have come up in the Chicago Early Learning planning meetings. We are not certain right now what kinds of locations and in-person services that we're going to have. There will be some ways that we can get paper applications to families who don't have the access to the internet and so on. We don't right now. Everything is shut down. This is, though, the precise reason why this is happening late, and why, even though we are allowing families to apply right now, we're not giving away any placements yet, because we want to come out with a satisfying answer for that question and allow families who don't have access to the application right now get one in before we do needs-based placement. The other piece, and I did not include that slide in this PowerPoint because I did not have a chance to talk to Marquinta. I know that the Action for Children hotline is operating and will be there to assist families. But they, just like I am, they are not in an office right now. They are distributed in their homes, and they have a system that lets the hotline calls reach the workers. So I don't know what the number is to put in the PowerPoint, but that will be communicated shortly. It will be communicated at the same time that we let you know when the launch date is. So families will be able to call the hotline and give their information, and hotline workers will be able to enter the initial information. So that will be one solution. But I used to, last year's PowerPoint, I realized had the parent resources in here and had the phone number. I just offhand don't know if it's the same number or not. I will try to find that out now that that's come up, and we'll try to get that in the update that will go out this afternoon, assuming they're ready to take this call. But they've been operating the whole time, so I think they're up now. And they're expanding capacity. We realize we may get more calls than we did when the online, when centers were functioning and so on, because this will be the only way right now, since you're closed for the most part, the only way anyone's going to apply for next year is either through this application or through the hotline. So we'll get that information out.
Well, Craig, that's all the questions we have.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I am amazed by how many people tuned in and gratified. I hope, since there are more questions, I hope that we've answered your information, your questions that you had, and you're leaving feeling better informed. I'm uncomfortable doing this when I don't have a date, but I assure you, watch the next couple of weeks for the CSD updates, and we will get information out to you as soon as we can about how we're moving forward and the time frame for moving forward. So we thank you for your patience, and have a wonderful day. I hope you're all safe and well.